Good morning. It's wonderful to be with you again, and I want to continue with the Beatitudes, which is part of the Sermon on the Mount, found in Matthew 5. And last time we looked at blessed are those who mourn, and this morning I want to look at blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And meekness is something that's probably one of the most misunderstood and despised and unwanted attributes in the world. I think it's because it indicates a weakness. But actually, with God, meekness and humility are one of the most prized and precious and valuable attributes, because God's power is made perfect in our weakness. And that when we begin to understand how weak we are before God, that our dependence shifts from ourselves onto God, and we become God dependent or God confident. And we'll look at some of that just now. But 1 Peter 3 verse 3 to 4, Peter's writing to wives, but I think the principle holds for all of us, and he's speaking about adorning ourselves externally, and he's saying don't adorn yourself externally by braiding your hair, putting jewels on. I know as men we don't really do that, but it could be with that we put great value on having nice watches and cars and houses, and God says he's not impressed with that stuff. God says in verse 4, he says, let it be the hidden man of a heart, that adorn yourself internally, in that which is not corruptible, with a meek and quiet spirit, which is of great price, great value in the sight of God. So meekness is something that we want. Humility is something we want to have, because it's something valuable to God. In 1 Peter 5:6, Paul writes this about humility. He says, all of you clothe yourselves with humility towards one another, because God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. So humility and meekness is something that we want, because we need the grace of God in our lives. And also we don't want God opposing us. So he carries on. He says, humble yourself therefore under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. And I want to say there's a difference between you lifting yourself up and God lifting you up. When God lifts you up, nothing will be able to stop you. And the way to come into that place is through meekness and humility of heart under God's hand, and he will lift you up. And the word meek here is the Greek word praus, which literally means to be mild or to be humble. And we find a similar statement in Psalm 37 verse 11 to what Jesus said, where David writes, the meek will inherit the earth and enjoy great peace. And the earth Jesus is speaking about here is not this earth. He's speaking about the new earth that God will create at the end. And so he's saying that if we walk with meekness and humility on this earth and in this life, and we lose our lives in a sense for others and for Jesus in this life, we will inherit the new earth, which will far surpass this earth. And in so many ways, we'll have new bodies that will never die, never get sick. We'll see Jesus face to face. I always say, set up your bucket list for the new earth and lose your life on this earth. Give up your dreams and plans on this earth and lose your life with Jesus and set it up for the next earth, because we're going to be there for eternity. So what does meekness and humility look like? And I want to present two symptoms of a meek and a humble heart. And I humbly admit with meekness that there may be more, but I want to present these two. And the first one is it's an attitude of genuine recognition and conviction of how spiritually and morally bankrupt and weak we are without God. This is what meekness and humility is. And John 15:5, Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. But apart from me, you can do nothing. What Jesus is saying is that you need to realize that without me, you can actually do nothing of great value. And Paul writes similarly in Philippians 4:13. He says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But it's through Christ who strengthens me. And the Bible is so full of this type of language. So the first symptom is a genuine recognition of our desperate need of God. And number two is to genuinely consider others better than yourself, and to rejoice with sincerity in their successes. And this one can be a tough one. Philippians 2:3-4, Paul writes, he says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others." And he writes about this rejoicing as other parts are honored in 1 Corinthians 12:26. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. So a meek person would rejoice when others are being promoted, being used by God, they're carrying success in their lives. We rejoice that they as they are honored amongst us. So I trust that's been helpful. Jesus says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." So let's position ourselves with a meek and humble heart before God, and I believe we'll start to see more of the presence and the power of God flowing through our lives, and that ultimately we'll inherit the new earth and be with Jesus for eternity. So trust that's been helpful. Enjoy your day further, and we'll chat again soon. Cheers.